A very good morning to all of you and welcome back to today's analysis session for 6th of July 2023. So we see that Supreme Court extends the interim protection for Tista. Tista Silverwad from the arrest in a forgery case which is linked to 2002 Gujarat riots. So that is the whole case going on. We'll not go into the details of it. Then Ajit moves Election Commission. Says he was elected the NCP chief on June 30. So his petition for the party symbol, affidavits from the 40 MPs, MLAs, they are dated June 30, but they were summarized only on July 5, says the Election Commission sources. So rival factions, they also hold the show of strength. We've been going through what are the political changes, things going on in the state of Maharashtra. Then you can find out about this topic about which if there is any split in a political party, then which faction will get the original party symbol and accordingly the party name also. So you can find about this, what has been the basis of giving this in the past, if there was some similar incidences by the Supreme Court, by the Election Commission of India. So UGC says that PhD is no longer mandatory for teaching jobs. So that's an update. This topic we've already taken out with the tussle going on between the state governor and the chief minister in case of Tamil Nadu. So here, the basically constitutional articles, they become extremely important. We need to have extreme clarity about their provisions. But we've already taken up this in detail. So that's a repeat, obviously, because there will be some developments every day regarding it. Then to remove the deadlock, third judge named to hear the plea in High Court by Senthil Balaji's wife. So he was named by the Chief Justice after a split verdict. It was delivered by a division bench of judges and justices. So a third judge was basically added. So heavy rain and rough sea batter Kerala and Karnataka. So Kerala has been witnessing incessant rain for the third consecutive day, triggered by a cyclonic circulation of the Bay of Bengal. And in Karnataka, 4 people have died in 2 days in the rain-related incidents. So we see such incidences or similar situations every year. So why every year we are seeing the similar situation when it comes to the preparedness level of the administration, and what measures needs to be taken can be the thing that you can more think about in terms of disaster management. Coming to the editorial page, so here let's see the important topics that we have today. With diminishing returns, India benefited as a member of the SCO, but the future is not bright. So let's delve into this topic. So Shanghai Cooperation Organization, they had the state meeting hosted by the Prime Minister on Tuesday, marked the first time that India chaired the summit of the regional countries. So we saw that Iran is the latest country to become a member of SCO, and India became a full-time member in 2017 along with Pakistan. Then government has held that joining the originally Eurasian group, it was important as a member countries. They make up third of the global GDP, fifth of the global trade, fifth of the global oil reserves, and about 44% of the natural gas reserves. So these are some of the important facts given. Apart from this, also important is its focus on the regional security and connectivity. So that is important even from the perspective of India's national security. They are key to India's growth, and that includes terrorism in Pakistan, Chinese aggressions, as well as the PRI. So being inside the tent, it's important. And especially as Pakistan is also a member, even if that means conducting joint exercises under the SEO, regional anti-terrorist structure. So it also gives India an interface with the Central Asian markets and the resources. Again, that is where like very important thing for India. And finally, joining the SCO was a key part of India's stated ambitions on a multi-alignment and strategic autonomy and becoming a balancing power in the world. So over the past year, this has become an economic necessity as India has chosen to be neutral on the Ukraine war, benefiting from fuel and the fertilizer purchases from Russia. So it was expected that India's turn to chair the SAJSA would be a major event, rivaling the expected pomp around the G20 meet. That's going to be in September. And in addition, given the Russia's and China's blocks on the G20 joint communique that India is keen to find consensus on, the SA summit would have been a convenient venue for Prime Minister to negotiate a resolution with his counterparts. But India's decision to postpone the SA summit due to the Prime Minister's US state visit and then to turn it into a virtual summit may have been a dampener on the SEO outcomes. So India being a chair this time, we did not endorse a roadmap on the economic cooperation due to concerns over China's imprint. And with its SEO chairpersonship ending, the government may now be feeling the law of diminishing returns over its SEO engagement, one that might make its task of hosting the G20 even much more difficult. So the things they have basically gone completely reverse as per the expectations. So choosing a new palette for India's creative economy. So digital platforms and the technology, they have enabled India's artists and artisans to reach wider audiences. But still, they face some challenges that are related to the economic sustainability, market access, digital divide, crime in the art world, and preservation. So it is this article is completely in the context of the artist and how basically the online medium can help them. So recognizing the economic importance of the culture, UNESCO World Conference on Cultural Policies and Sustainable Development was held to address contemporary issues in the multicultural societies. So collaborative model, it can help meet the challenges faced by the creative economy and promote the economic contribution of culture. So the risk is Zaporizhia NPP. So this is a nuclear power plant situated in Ukraine. So was the Ukrainian nuclear power plant a matter of concern? And why has the Lithuania-based Bellona Foundation report outlined? How is this nuclear plant? It's different from the Chernobyl power plant. And what agent is used as the moderator and coolant in the reactor? So these are some of the basic things. So nuclear power plants, they are complex and sophisticated facilities with several layers of safety measures, but no NPP in the world is built to withstand a war. Yet this is the risk that has befallen the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine. So it was taken over by Russian forces in May 2022 and has since had to operate in conditions that threaten its safety. So what is the reactor's design? So it is located southwest of Zaporizhia city along the Dnieper River. And it has 6 VVER 1000 reactors for a total power generation capacity of 6 gigawatts. So it consists of reactor vessel in which uranium oxide fuel rods, they are immersed in water, and control rods, they are inserted at the top. So water is both coolant and moderator, and a pressurizer holds the water at a high but constant pressure to prevent it from boiling. So this is the primary cooling circuit that functions. And water in the primary circuit does not leave the reactor vessel at any time. So all these technical things they are explained. So what is actually the risk associated with it? So as per a recent report, it evaluated the risk of different types of accidents at this facility based on the types of damage sustained in the worst case scenario. And the containment is completely damaged and a projectile strikes a reactor while it is generating power. So principal danger here is that primary circuit water, it could depressurize as steam and escape into the air along with the radioactive material and other volatile substances. Then obviously it would be a great risk to the human safety, to lives of people. And this mixture, it will contain the isotope iodine 131, so which is easily dispersed by winds and accumulates in and damages the thyroid gland in the humans. So because of the differences in its design, when we are comparing with a Chernobyl nuclear reactor, what was released in sustained fashion at Chernobyl for around a week is likely to be released in a single short burst at Zaporizhia. So that is the intensity of risk, and this could keep the fallout to within 100 kilometers. So that's very huge area. So are there any best case scenarios available to us? So if the reactors they are shut for a few months, the iodine 131 will almost completely decay, removing an important threat. And if a reactor has been in cold shutdown, then the chances of an explosive leak that also drops. So the best option from the perspective of security is shutting it down for a few months. Then what are the other concerns related to it? So as per this report, it says that one was the Fukushima scenario when the NPP it becomes disconnected from the external power grid. This is dangerous because when the nuclear reactors they are not happening in the reactor, the nuclear fuel has to be cooled, which means coolant pumps need to operate. So if they don't work, the fuel it could become hot enough to melt through the reactor's bottom, where it will contaminate the soil, air, and water. Another concern is the working conditions of the 3,000 or so people at this plant. So most of whom they have refused to sign new employment contracts with their new Russian employers. So that is the update about this whole situation. So Iran's induction in the SCO. Why will the entry of SCO's newest member aggravate its image of being anti-West? So SEO was built on the Shanghai Five grouping. So the five countries were Russia, China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan, which had come together in post-Soviet era in 1996 in order to work on the regional security, reduction of the border troops, and terrorism. So what are the main goals of SEO? So it describes its main goals as strengthening mutual trust, neighborliness among the member states, promoting their effective cooperation in politics, trade, economy, research, technology, and culture, making joint efforts to maintain and ensure peace, security, and stability in the region, moving towards establishment of democratic, fair, and rational new international political economic order. So that is the main goal of SEO. So that's important to keep in mind. So has SEO is like dealt successfully with the bilateral issues or not? So India and Pakistan, they joined the SEO as observers in 2005 and they become permanent members in 2017. So since 2014, India and Pakistan, they have cut all the ties, talks, and trade with each other. However, both the countries have consistently attended all the meetings of SEOs, three councils, and despite the fact that India causes Pakistan of perpetrating the cross-border terrorism at every other forum at SEO, Indian and Pakistani armed forces they take part in the military and the anti-terrorism exercises together. So SEO it is also facilitated talks between India and China on the line of actual control border issue as well. So why is Iran's induction it is significant? So while the SCO's original goals are focused more on the stability and security, recent declarations have put the focus squarely on connectivity in the region. So that is another emerging focus area for SCO, connectivity in the region. So for India, that has built its connectivity strategy through Iran's Chabahar port, where it operates a terminal, and through the international north-south transport corridor. So here you need to find out more about the member countries, and you can have much more clarity about by understanding the map of it. So it goes through Iran and Central Asia to Russia, and the entrance of Iran in the SCO is an important milestone. So Iran's presence, it ensures support for the New Delhi's moves to circumvent the land-based trade through Pakistan, which has blocked the transit trade from India. And Uzbekistan's president, even he said the Central Asian states that are double landlocked will seek to build a multimodal trade route via Afghanistan to ports in both Pakistan and Iran. So you need to firstly find out which are the countries which are double landlocked. Then it will be also allowing India to conduct the trade with the region while staying out of the China's BRI. And also Iran, which is historically a close partner of India, that has also suffered from terrorism emanating from Pakistan and Afghanistan, will bolster India's push for an end to the terror safe havens. So SEO is like increasingly seen as an anti-West forum, and Iran, like Russia, it is also under pressure. It's also under the severe sanctions that have been imposed by the Western world. So in addition, US has also accused Iran of supplying the weapons to Russia, and the expected induction of the Belarus next year will only strengthen this image of SEO, even as India strengthens its ties with the Quad, making the Indian balancing act much more difficult in coming times. So cabinet gives notes to the data protection bill. For us, the features, the provisions, they become important. So legislation will be introduced in the monsoon session, specifies the norms on the management of personal data of the Indian residents. And activists, they've raised concerns on an amendment to the RTI Act 2005 that would prohibit the government departments from sharing the personal information. So that is one of the major concerns. And it draws from an EU law, that is the General Data Protection Regulation Act of the European Union, benchmarks 23 instances in which taking consent for the recording data is not possible. And there are special circumstances like the golden hour during an accident or the natural disasters and so on. So we talk about the concerns related to the amendment in the RTI Act. So Right to Information activists have raised concerns to an amendment that would prohibit the government departments from sharing personal information, arguing that government departments, they may refuse to share the information that could hold public office holders accountable. So any personal data will not be shared with a third party. However, a person whose data has been breached can ask for their own information through RTI. So we'll go into the much details of this bill once we have a proper editorial over it. So as the grain deal nears the deadline on July 17, US urges India to use unique voice with Russia. So here, basically US wants India to utilize its close ties with Russia so that the grain exported from Ukraine, it is not blocked and there are no like supply related issues. So initiative which was mediated by Turkey last year after the Ukrainian and the Russian ships, they were stopped from carrying the wheat exports out of the Black Sea due to the war, is set to expire on July 17. So here in this deal, India definitely it can play an important role, and that's true even according to the expectations of the US. So Chandrayaan-3 integrated with the launch vehicle LBM-3. So we also have a picture of it. So the launch window is between 12th to 19th of July, and the orbital raising will take place soon after the launch, and the lander and the orbiter, they will orbit the moon before touching down on the lunar surface. So launched with the launch vehicle Mark III. So India not averse to imposing barriers on clean energy imports. So India would not shy away from imposing the barriers to Western imports of clean energy if those countries raised barriers to India's potential exports of green hydrogen. So obviously India would also retaliate with some similar measures. So he said that India wanted the whole world to partner with it and not set up barriers as some countries they had started doing so. So they had given speeches on the benefits and the ethics of free trade, and now they were setting up barriers at the same time. So four new countries they have consulted to join OPEC, and that includes Azerbaijan, Malaysia, Brunei, and Mexico. So the discussions they still continue. So Russia-Ukraine war, they warn of attack on nuclear plant. So that's going to be a very dangerous situation and something which cannot be controlled if such an attack takes place. So Kremlin warned on Wednesday that Kyiv could be preparing a provocation that Russian controls Zaporizhia nuclear plant, a flashpoint of concern in the conflict in Ukraine. Situation is quite tense because the threat of sabotage from the Kyiv regime is really high. The UK, Canada, Sweden, Ukraine take Iran to the top UN court. So Iran blamed an air defense operator who they said mistook the Boeing 737-800 for an American cruise missile. The Philippines blames China boats for harassment, and we know specifically in the Indo-Pacific region the growing assertiveness of China, and this is definitely substantiating that. A global rupee may raise volatility. So India is making efforts in order to internationalize Indian rupee, but it may raise volatility at the same time. So rupee internationalization could come in conflict with the domestic monetary policy. Obviously, we'll have to understand and analyze what could be the potential impacts on the domestic monetary policy, and then accordingly, things would have to be reshaped. So that's a caution from the officials of an interdepartmental group of RBI. However, the group asserts that the benefits of the internationalization they far outweigh the various concerns that exists. So So a global rupee may accentuate external shocks as funds can freely flow in and out of India. So this would be one factor which would be contributing to volatility. Then it can also offer benefits like limited exchange rate risk, lower cost of the capital. But RBI said the observations they do not reflect its official position on the issue. Then even in case of the services sector's growth, which has been indicated by the PMI, we see there is an eased to 3-month low in June. So we are seeing that the growth of services sector, even that is slowing down. So that can be a concern for the Indian economy, because services sector is very important, plays an important role in India's growth. And even when we talk about the services exports, so that's an important area. Coming to Financial Express newspaper, so this we've already seen about the data protection bill. It gets the note from the cabinet. The law to cover AI data breaches as well. So this is obviously because we are seeing our dependence on the AI technology is being increasing and how things are revolving around it. So that's going to be an important thing. So step closer. So age of children kept at 18 years or below for the parental consent. For penalties beyond rupees 500 crore, law would need to be amended, and some government agencies they are exempted from provisions on security grounds. So businesses to notify the individuals about the details and the purpose of use of the personal data, and individuals to have the right to withdraw the consent for processing of their personal data, and it will be tabled in the monsoon session. So manufacturing sector is key to 8 to 9% of India's growth. So Amitabh Kant, who's G20 Sherpa, says that high growth of 8 to 9% can be driven by focus on manufacturing and urbanization. And if India has to achieve sustained growth over a long period of time, India has to fire with all the cylinders. So definitely there's no doubt in the potential that we see in the manufacturing sector. The only thing is that we need to focus upon it more with more policies and schemes which revolve around it. So we aim to be a part of the global supply chain. So with that being said, 12 countries, they're central to the new trade promotion strategy. So trends in the trade with 20 nations have been analyzed to decide on the focus areas so that the current trend that we are seeing are exports, they are slowing down because of the slow down the global demand. So now we are basically what we are trying to do in order to ensure that we are able to record good amount of growth in the exports is that we are going to focus on few areas where India enjoys competitive advantage. So we are planning to raise the exports to few set of countries which are listed here, and 8 to 9 commodity groups they have been figured out for push in these markets. And as we have the figure that in the month of May, exports they contracted by 10%. So we need to work upon this and we need to make it to the positive growth in exports. So this is one of the challenges when I talk about GST, about the evasion and obviously then the fake GSTs which are generated. So we're basically tackling that concern as well. So anti-dumping probe into the Chinese solar panel frame. So you need to have clarity about the anti-dumping duty in which scenario it is imposed by the importing country. Like India has been importing these solar panel frames from China. So we can impose the anti-dumping duty in case China is found selling these solar panel frames at a price to India, which is even below their domestic market prices in the Chinese market. So even in like that scenario, we use the anti-dumping duty. So the Directorate General of the Trade Remedies has started an anti-dumping investigation of imports of aluminium frames of the solar panels and modules from China. And this can be cited as one example in the answers if it is about anti-dumping duty. Then Power Minister hits out at the green trade barriers. So green hydrogen to be the future fuel of India and seeks global investment in the energy sector. So India is taking a lot of green initiatives as a commitment and will continue doing it. It wants the world to partner with it to tackle the global problem. Countries that have been advocating the free trade for decades, they are setting up barriers themselves. So efforts to globalize the rupee. So RBI working group proposes measures in order to ensure this thing. So suggestions includes the working group recommends enabling rupee as an additional settlement currency in multilateral mechanisms that exist. And it encourages integrating the Indian payment systems with other countries for the cross-border transactions. So we experimented with this thing in this area with Russia in terms of the crude oil imports that we are doing specifically, we saw the amount or the share that is increased. So, however, we again saw some challenges even in this case because we saw a few days back as well that so much Indian rupee is accumulated with China, so they don't know what to use it for. So that is the main concern. So in Indian Express newspaper, let's see the topics. We've already gone through them. Then first FCRA, now think tank, CPR losses it loses its tax exempt status, so debilitating blow, says the president, and denies allegations to appeal in IT80. So 4 months after its license for receiving the foreign donations, they were revoked. The Center for Policy Research, which is one of the country's leading public policy think tanks that works with several state governments and even the central ministries, has lost a tax exemption status it had for almost 5 decades. So Mumbai is Taiwan's next stop as its firms move far from China. So we are basically seeing that India's closeness with Taiwan is increasing. And obviously that wouldn't be something which would be liked by China. So at a time when the top Taiwanese tech firms they are looking at relocating their manufacturing facilities away from China to India, Taiwan announced that it will open a new office in Mumbai. It is a third office in India after in Delhi and Chennai. So this is being viewed as a strategic move by TP as its China plus one strategy. It aims at encouraging the businesses to expand their operations outside of China while maintaining their presence in that country. So basically, they're not shutting down their businesses and moving out of China. They are basically diversifying their cooperation with other countries so as to reduce their complete dependence upon China. So in the context of green hydrogen, we are hosting an international conference on it. And India's furthering green hydrogen as the future's fuel for a better world. The National Green Hydrogen Mission, it will give a new direction to the 21st century India. So this is a part of a green hydrogen revolution for sustainable tomorrow. So here, all India's remarkable renewable energy milestones have been listed. So they become important, powering the future ambitious goal of 500 gigawatt of the non-fossil installed capacity by 2030 is one of the targets, and pioneering a sustainable future. So exporting of green hydrogen, we are having the green hydrogen mission for production as well. Leading the way, we currently ranked fourth in globally in the renewable energy capacity, and accelerating towards clean energy future, rapidly expanding solar and wind sector. Currently, we have the installed capacity of 67 gigawatt of solar energy and 43 gigawatt of the wind energy installed. So you need to know about the proper chronology according to the maximum capacity that we have. And then unmatched growth, India's renewable energy sector grows 2.26 times in the last 9 years. So it is more than doubled in driving sustainable investments. So around $78 billion have been invested since 2014. And policy reforms, the expansion of the capacity, the transmission, consumption, and Atmanirbhar supply chains in renewable energy is the focus, and empowering citizens through schemes like PM Kusum, the rooftop solar parks, so rooftop installation of the solar panels, and then we have solar parks enabling the access to renewable energy for all. So India is deepening its ties with US in areas where Moscow can no longer take the lead. So India basically, in every case, we see the balancing act that India is doing, and obviously that is in favor of our own national interest. So although there is an understanding that governing partnership with US will not affect India's ties with Russia, officials and experts in Moscow, they continue to view the geopolitics as a primary driver for the US policy towards India. And according to Ryabkov, which is Russia, will continue to deepen its strategic partnership, including the defense ties with India, despite intensified attempts by US to bring India into its geopolitical structures. Then yesterday we discussed in detail about the NATO plus grouping, whether India should join it or not. So that's another important area. So a long-lasting solution to the Manipur crisis cannot be military, but must come from people-to-people understanding. And meanwhile, we see army treads carefully in the state. So the central government is trying to ensure that peace gets restored in the state, but again, after every few days, we are seeing instances of violence getting repeated. So the thing is that we need local understanding between the people of the state to increase so that they can live in peace. So the data privacy framework, the reworked version of India's long-awaited data protection law has been cleared by the cabinet. Could come before the parliament this monsoon session, and what has changed and what has not. So data protection, the privacy legislation worldwide, when we have a look at this map. So there are 71% countries, they have a legislation regarding this thing. 9%, they are still in draft stages. 15% countries, they have no legislation at all. So in India, we have electronics transactions legislations, we have consumer protection, there's no data. Then privacy and data protection, we have a legislation on that. And in cybercrime also, we have a legislation. So countries with the legislation are in this green color, and countries with draft legislation are in blue. Countries with no legislation, they're in orange color. And then countries with no data, so it's in gray. So on electronics transactions, also we have a law on privacy and data protection. We have a law on cybercrime. We have a law, but no data on consumer protection as of now in case of India. So we'll understand the concerns around this data protection bill. One is we have discussed is the amendment to the RTI Act. So wide-ranging exemptions for the central government and its agencies, which were among the most criticized provisions of the previous draft, they are understood to have been retained. And it is learned to have prescribed that central government can exempt any instrumentality of the state from adhering to the provisions on account of national security. So that is the reason. And control of the central government in appointing the members of the Data Protection Board, which is going to be an adjudicatory body that will deal with the privacy related grievances and the disputes between two parties, is learned to have been retained as well. So again, we can see political interference here in this case. So that is something not acceptable. And then this we've already taken up the amendment to RTI Act, where the personal data of the government functionaries is likely to be protected under it, making it difficult to be shared with an RTI applicant. So what changes are likely? A key possible change is learned to be made in the way it deals with the cross-border data flows to the international jurisdictions. And that is moving from whitelisting approach to a blacklisting mechanism. So it would allow the global data flows by default to all the jurisdictions other than specified negative list of the countries. And that's going to be one thing. So provision on deemed consent, sorry. In the previous draft could also be reworded to make it stricter for the private entities while allowing government departments to assume the consent by processing the personal data on grounds of national security and the public interest. So in this case, a person will not, his or her consent would not be asked for. It would be deemed that the person has given the consent, and that would be applicable. It is expected that this change has been made in the recent draft, that it would be the public agencies who would basically get the access to the data of the person in on the grounds of national security and the public interest again, but this wouldn't be available for the private entities. So here we have the comparison of the Indian law with the European Union, US and China models. You can just go through it once. So since we are seeing tomato prices hitting new records, and that we are saying that is because of the seasonal factors. So CMV and TOMV, these are the two viruses that hit the tomato crops this year, and because of that, we are seeing the supply crunch. So the two plant pathogens, they have similar names and they cause similar damage to the crop, but they belong to different viral families. So that is one of the reasons. It's like, how do they spread? They mainly spread through infected seeds, saplings, agricultural tools, and CMV is spread by aphids, which are the sap-sucking insects. So conditions of high temperature followed by the intermittent rain, which allow the aphids to multiply, they are conducive to the spread of CMV. So how do they affect the crop? So both the viruses, they can cause almost 100% crop loss unless properly treated on time. And the foliage of the plants infected with TOMV shows alternating yellowish and dark green areas, which often appear as blisters on the leaves. So distortion of the leaves and twisting of the younger leaves, they are also one of the symptoms. So too tired to fly, DCGA's rules that bind the airlines and the crews and why they matter. Obviously, the matter is from the perspective of safety. So instances of pilots refusing to fly, citing the fatigue or completion of the regulation duty hours, they are not uncommon. And despite the delays and inconvenience to the passengers, pilots and airlines are usually not willing to bend, given that flight crew perform the safety critical work and the safety of those on board is top priority in case of aircraft operations. So, India Civil Aviation Safety Regulator, which is the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, keeps a close watch on these FDTL compliance by the airlines and the flight crews. So, that is FDTL stands for the Flight Duty Time Limitation Norms. So, talking about these norms in India, so the International Civil Aviation Organization, which is a UN agency, it develops the policies and standards for the use of the skies. And national civil aviation authorities, they are required to issue the prescriptive regulations for flight time, the duty period, and the duty period and the rest period limitations. So it is the responsibility of the airline to adhere to these norms and responsibility of the crew to look into the safety norms before flying. So the International Atomic Energy Agency says it has seen no explosive at the nuclear plant but seeks more access. So this is in the context of the recent developments with the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine. And obviously we see how things are developing around it. This we've already taken up the RBI's measures and suggestions for internationalization of rupee and also its inclusion in the IMF's SDR. So you can find out about SDRs, these special drawing rights, which all currencies are a part of it, and how it actually functions, and it acts as a safeguard for the country is going through economic crisis, specifically the BOP crisis. So rural demand to have the FMCG register around 7 to 9% growth. So we are seeing that rural demand that needs to recover back because that plays an again important role even in our GDP growth rate. So surplus liquidity in the banking system improves to over rupees 2 lakh crores with large amounts of rupees 2,000 denomination notes that are being deposited in the banks and increase in the government spending. Surplus liquidity in the bank system that is crossed rupees 2 lakh crore mark. So you need to know about the factors which can influence the liquidity in the banking system, or all in all, when we talk about even in the context of the economy. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for joining us in the today's analysis session. I hope the things are clear. And do subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and also hit the like button for this video. Thank you so much.